What if the exact reason you just keep failing to reach your most ambitious goals is because you actually care entirely too much about how you feel?
Oh, that is a wild thought to start with.
Right, but think about it. We spend so much time waiting for that perfect internal green light. We just assume that if we don't feel this massive surge of inspiration or, a deep sense of readiness, then we just aren't meant to do the work today.
Yeah, we just sit there in this state of suspended animation. We're entirely convinced that action requires a prerequisite emotion.
Yes, exactly.
And in a high stakes environment, whether you are trying to write a book or launch a company or, produce a Grammy winning record, waiting for that specific feeling is a phenomenal way to ensure the work never actually materializes.
It's the ultimate trap. Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are taking a really close look today at a highly focused script from a source called the Daily Win Club.
It's a great piece, really sharp.
It really is. And this material completely dismantles that cultural obsession we have with feeling ready. It strips away all that toxic positivity, all the shortcuts, and it really proves why getting hyped up to do your work is actually the fastest way to guarantee you will eventually quit.
Which is tough to hear, but so necessary.
Completely. So for you listening right now, someone who knows the reality of systemic burnout, the weight of massive information overload, and the sheer pressure of high-level creative output, this is going to fundamentally challenge your relationship with your own drive.
That's the real mission of this deep dive today.
Right. We are shifting the focus from chasing temporary feelings to making permanent neurological decisions.
Because the overarching goal of this source material is to address a universal conflict. It's that classic battle between discipline and motivation. And it approaches this not with, vague platitudes, but by breaking down the actual mechanics of why we stall out when we know we should be moving forward.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand how to execute at a high level consistently, we first have to dissect why our default strategy is biologically and, well, structurally broken.
Right. And for most of us, that default strategy is relying heavily on motivation.
Exactly. The core argument from the Daily Win Club script is that motivation is inherently flawed because it is chemically and emotionally unstable.
It's totally fleeting.
It is. It's a temporary state that heavily depends on constantly fluctuating variables.
Yeah.
Like it relies on how much sleep you got last night or your current blood sugar levels.
Or whether someone sent you a really annoying email 5 minutes ago.
Yes. One bad email and the whole day's plan goes out the window. It's like relying on the weather to power a sailboat.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like it's a great ride when the wind blows, but you are completely stranded when it doesn't.
And the source outlines this very familiar trap. One day, the neurochemical balance is perfect. You feel incredibly strong, deeply inspired, and ready to tackle a massive project.
You just feel like working.
Exactly. You feel like working. But the very next day, those variables shift. Your dopamine levels dip, you feel a little brain fog, and suddenly you just feel like sleeping. The drive has completely vanished.
Well, I have a question then. If motivation is so wildly unreliable, if it's so subject to the whims of our biology and our environment, why does our culture, especially in creative and high-performing industries, idolize it so much?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, we romanticize the idea of the muse visiting us. We idolize the image of the producer who stays up for 3 days straight because they caught a wave of pure, unadulterated inspiration.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the source identifies this cultural obsession with the hype as the exact precise mechanism of failure.
Wait, really? The hype itself is the problem?
Yes, because we idolize the hype, since that initial wave of motivation triggers a massive dopamine release. It feels profoundly validating. It makes us feel like we are finally on the right path.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that. It feels good in the moment.
Right. But the danger of letting those dopamine spikes dictate your actions is profound. Motivation, by its very definition in this context, only builds excitement. And excitement is an incredibly fragile foundation for any kind of long-term compounding growth.
Because you cannot guarantee you will be excited on a Tuesday morning when your eyes are burning, your coffee is cold, and you are staring at a blank logic board in the studio, just trying to fix a mix that isn't working.
Exactly. When you rely on motivation, you are essentially handing the operational control of your career over to a random number generator.
That is terrifying.
It is. If the emotional forecast is sunny, you work. If it's cloudy, you stall out. But successful people, according to the source, bypass that unstable system entirely.
Because they have a different engine.
Right. Motivation is a spark plug. Discipline is the transmission.
Oh, I like that.
A spark plug can fire all day long, creating a lot of heat and noise. But if the transmission isn't engaged, the car just revs loudly in the driveway. It sounds impressive, but there is zero forward momentum.
Which brings us to the alternative engine. If we can't rely on the spark plug of motivation, we have to engage the transmission.
Hmm.
And the source material argues that this transmission is discipline.
Yes. And the script defines discipline in a stark, uncompromising way. It's doing what absolutely needs to be done, even when you fundamentally do not feel like doing it.
Doing it anyway.
Right. It's the definition of taking action without letting your emotional state hold a veto over your physical movements. They use the gym as a prime example.
Oh, right. Yeah, the gym analogy.
Some days you are excited to go, some days you are exhausted. But a disciplined person shows up regardless because it's a responsibility.
Mm.
You wake up and you execute not because a wave of inspiration hit you, but because it is an established responsibility.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you tell a high performer that the secret to success is just pushing through exhaustion every single day and ignoring everything they feel, that sounds like a fast track to a nervous breakdown.
It does sound brutal when you frame it that way.
Right. Like, isn't it completely exhausting to constantly fight your own emotions every single day? How is constantly fighting a daily wrestling match with your own ego sustainable?
Well,
Like if every single morning requires a monumental battle of willpower just to sit down at the mixing desk or open up the laptop, isn't that a recipe for ultimate burnout?
it sounds like a recipe for burnout because you are imagining a scenario where the brain is actively negotiating with itself every single day.
Okay, so that's not what's happening.
Oh, not with true discipline.
Right.
Let's look at the actual neurology of habituation. Every time you wake up and ask yourself, should I go to the studio today? Should I work on that difficult track?
You're opening up a debate.
Exactly. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for complex decision-making, has to burn glucose. It simulates the future, weighs the pros and cons, and battles against the limbic system, which just wants immediate comfort.
And that burns energy.
A ton of it. That internal negotiation is what actually causes exhaustion. Decision fatigue is a real, measurable biological drain.
So the friction isn't the work itself. The friction is the agonizing decision-making process leading up to the work.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, discipline actually saves you biological energy.
Wait, discipline saves energy. I always thought of it as this exhausting grind.
That's the misconception. By turning a task into a non-negotiable responsibility, you completely bypass the prefrontal cortex. Think about brushing your teeth.
Oh, right. You don't need a fiery motivational speech to brush your teeth in the morning.
Exactly. You don't have to get hyped up in the mirror to use dental floss. It is an automatic, non-negotiable responsibility.
It's just what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
You have shifted that action from the decision-making center of your brain to the basal ganglia, which governs automatic habits and runs on very little energy.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Discipline removes the decision entirely. The alarm goes off, and you execute, conserving all that mental energy for the actual creative work itself.
So discipline is routing the action to the basal ganglia, so it runs on autopilot, completely bypassing that exhausting emotional negotiation. We understand the mechanism now.
Right.
But what does the math of this mindset actually look like over a long timeline? Because in the moment, choosing to rest versus choosing to work feels like a pretty minor divergence.
The source material provides a really grounded scenario to illustrate this compounding math. It's the 20-minute daily rule.
Let's talk about that.
The script asks, what happens if someone commits to practicing a skill for just 20 minutes a day, every single day for an entire year?
Yeah.
The result is a massive, disproportionate expansion in skill, confidence, and cognitive ability. Compare that to the person who only studies when motivated. They work for 2 days, stop for 5 days, start again, resulting in zero consistency and zero growth.
See, for someone listening who regularly pulls like 14-hour studio sessions to get an album out, or who is used to locking themselves in a room for days to crack a creative problem, 20 minutes sounds like a rounding error.
It sounds like nothing.
It barely covers the time it takes to boot up the equipment and organize the files. So how do we reframe that perspective for a high achiever who thinks 20 minutes is simply too small to matter?
We have to separate the sheer volume of work from the neurological habit of task initiation.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
The person who only works when they feel a massive surge of motivation might indeed pull a 14-hour session. They produce a flurry of output. But because they drain their system entirely and because they only rely on the hype, they might not touch their equipment again for 3 weeks.
Right, so it's like someone sprinting down the street at top speed, only to completely collapse on the curb and not move for an hour, while the disciplined person just takes a steady, continuous walk and ends up miles ahead.
That's a great analogy. When you stop for 3 winks, you lose the rhythm, the flow state, and the subtle daily connections your brain makes with the material.
It's almost like watching someone try to start a campfire with lighter fluid.
Oh,
They douse the logs, strike a match, and there is this huge, spectacular burst of flame. It looks incredible for about 3 seconds.
and
And then the fluid burns off, the flame dies, and it leaves the actual wood completely untouched and freezing cold. The 20-minute daily rule is like carefully nursing a small ember. It isn't as flashy as the lighter fluid, but it eventually catches the wood on fire and burns all night.
the source calls this the daily win habit. Success is not an event. It is not built during a single random marathon session fueled by a fleeting mood. It is built daily.
Right.
By stacking one small win, even if it is just 20 minutes of organizing session files or writing a single melody, you are doing something far more important than just making 20 minutes of progress.
Yeah.
You are proving to yourself every single day that you are someone who shows up. You are fundamentally altering your own identity and building deep self-trust.
So what does this all mean? We know the theory. We understand the neurology of bypassing the prefrontal cortex, and we see the math behind the daily win habit.
The foundation is there.
But how does the listener actually build this discipline from scratch without their brain aggressively fighting back? Going from an emotionally driven workflow to a state of systematic execution seems like a massive, massive leap.
The beauty of the Daily Win Club script is its pragmatism. It provides a precise, actionable 3-step playbook to physically program this discipline into your daily life.
Let's hear it.
Step 1 is start small. Do not try to change your entire operating system in one day. Simply commit to that initial 20 minutes of focused, unbroken work.
Okay, step 1, start small. What's step 2?
Step 2 is be consistent. Execute that small block every single day, pushing through the initial biological resistance.
Got it. And step 3?
Step 3 is remove distractions. Put the phone in another room, turn off the Wi-Fi if necessary, and focus solely on the singular goal.
I want to really target that first step, starting small.
Mhm.
Why is the human instinct always to completely overhaul our entire existence by 6 a.m. on a Monday?
Oh, the Monday morning overhaul. We all do it.
We do. We decide we are going to wake up at dawn, meditate for an hour, run 10 miles, drink a green smoothie, and produce 3 flawless tracks by noon. It's an all-or-nothing mindset that seems biologically hardwired into us.
This raises an important question, and it brings us right back to our addiction to dopamine.
Really, dopamine again.
Yes. Overhauling your life and your imagination is a highly stimulating fantasy. Planning to be a completely different, hyper-productive person tomorrow releases a massive amount of feel-good chemicals today.
So just thinking about being productive makes us feel productive.
Exactly. It is thrilling. Conversely, sitting down at a desk to do 20 minutes of tedious sound mixing or administrative work is painfully boring. The brain rejects the small, boring task in favor of the grand, exciting fantasy, ensuring you never actually start either.
It's like walking into a gym for the first time and trying to lift a 200-pound weight. You try to lift it on day 1 because the idea of lifting it feels good to your ego, but in reality, you just tear a muscle and quit.
That's exactly it. A guaranteed setup for failure.
But let's look at step 3, removing distractions. I think this is actually the hidden mechanism that makes step 1 possible.
The connection between step 3 and step 1 is profound. Think about the friction of task initiation. Often, the reason it is so difficult to start that 20 minutes of work is not because the work itself is agonizingly difficult.
Right, it's not the work.
It is because the alternative, scrolling on your phone, absorbing instant, effortless dopamine from social media, is sitting right next to you.
If your brain expects a massive, unearned dopamine reward from a glowing rectangle in your pocket, the low dopamine reality of staring at a complex logic board feels physically painful.
Exactly. We misdiagnose the problem. We think we have a discipline issue or a lack of motivation, when in reality, we just have a distraction issue. Our dopamine baselines are entirely skewed.
That makes a lot of sense.
If your phone is buzzing on the desk, the amount of cognitive energy required to suppress the urge to check it and instead focus on your work is massive.
Because you're fighting 2 battles at once.
Yes, you are intentionally forcing your brain to do 2 things at once. execute a complex task, and actively suppress a highly ingrained addiction. You are artificially raising the difficulty level of your own work.
Wow.
By putting the phone in another room, you reset the environment. You drastically lower the friction required to achieve focus. You aren't just removing a distraction, you are clearing the neurological runway so the habit can actually take off.
You are setting up your physical environment so that the disciplined choice is the path of least resistance.
Mhm.
You strip away the heavy weights from the bar before you try to lift it.
Precisely.
Small steps to lower the psychological threshold, daily consistency to route the action to the basal ganglia, and ruthless environmental design to protect your dopamine baseline. That is the actual, unsentimental formula the source provides for elite execution.
It strips away the illusion that highly successful people just feel better or more inspired than everyone else.
They don't.
They don't. They have simply built better systems to manage the days when they feel nothing at all.
That's so powerful. Well, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's consolidate the ultimate takeaway from this daily Win Club source material. We've bypassed the fluff, the toxic positivity, and the endless search for the perfect life hack.
Good riddance to all of that.
Right. What we are left with is a very stark, very powerful reality. Motivation is merely a feeling. It is the weather. It comes and goes without your permission, and you cannot control it. Discipline, however, is a hard neurological decision.
It is the active, conscious choice to work, to improve, and to execute your craft every single day, regardless of the emotional forecast.
For you, the listener, navigating the pressures of your own ambitions, the most empowering aspect of this framework is the shift in control.
Absolutely. By consistently making the decision to show up and execute your 20 minutes, you change the entire equation of your goals.
Success is no longer a vague possibility. It's no longer something you hope happens if the muse decides to visit you and you feel sufficiently motivated.
It transforms into an absolute inevitability. It becomes simple, compounding math.
It just becomes a matter of time. Now, the source material ends by asking its audience what self-growth topics they want to cover next. And they list out things like mastering time management, building unshakable confidence, designing optimal morning routines, and cultivating a no-excuses mindset.
All great topics.
But looking at that list, I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over today. We constantly treat concepts like confidence or the perfect morning routine as items we need to acquire before we can be successful.
We do. We treat them like prerequisites.
We tell ourselves we need to find our confidence before we can release that track or pitch that project or step into the studio. But what if you don't actually need to find your confidence first? What if you don't need to design the flawless, optimized morning routine before you start doing the actual work?
This is a massive paradigm shift.
What if those traits, confidence, sharp focus, a resilient mindset, aren't prerequisites for success, but rather the byproducts that naturally emerge after you commit to just 20 minutes of disciplined action today?
That's the real secret.
Ask yourself, are you waiting to feel confident before you pull your car out of the driveway, when putting the car in drive is the only mechanism that will actually build your confidence? Don't wait for lights to turn green. Stop checking the emotional weather forecast. Just go.
The engine is already built and the transmission is ready to engage. You just have to make the decision to put it in gear.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go get your daily win, and we will catch you next time.